Did you know that in addition to the superheroes we know and love today, when it was founded in 1939, Timely Comics was the original name of Marvel Comics. The company published romance comics and short adventure stories in the beginning. However, when World War II broke out, Timely adapted and started printing patriotic war stories. This proved to be so successful that they changed their name to Time Incorporated. In 1941, the word timely was thought to imply that their comics were produced quickly to meet the demands of the newsstand market. After the war, Time Incorporated tried to get back into the romance and humor comics market, but this time they failed. Their superhero characters were becoming increasingly unpopular because they were seen as representing wartime patriotism. By the mid-1950s, Time Incorporated had given up on comics altogether and folded Timely. This wasn't the end for the company, though. Martin Goodman, who had founded Timely, didn't give up easily. He wanted to get back into the business of publishing comics, so he hired a new team of artists and writers and relaunched the company as Atlas Comics. Atlas Comics was somewhat successful at first, but it couldn't compete with the likes of DC Comics, which had been dominated by Superman since the 1940s. Goodman had to shut down Atlas Comics again in 1955. Yet once again, he didn't give up. He came up with a new strategy. This time, he would try something different. Goodman reorganized his company yet again, hiring a new staff and focusing on a new type of superhero that would appeal to teenagers rather than children. This new comic book company was named Marvel Comics. Unlike the previous incarnations of Timely and Atlas, Marvel did not publish reprint collections. Instead, they focused entirely on original material. Marvel's first issue hit shelves in October of 1961 and featured a number of now iconic characters. Fantastic Four, the Human Torch, the Ant-Man, Namor the Submariner, and the original Hulk. One of these characters would soon overshadow the rest. That character was the Amazing Spider-Man. Peter Parker, a nerdy high school student, was bitten by a radioactive spider. This gave him special abilities that allowed him to swing around the city and fight crime. However, Peter had to deal with the usual problems that teenagers face, such as girls, school, and his annoying neighbor, J. Jonah Jameson. Marvel Comics took off in the early 1960s because of Spider-Man. Fans were drawn to his relatable struggles as well as his witty remarks. Comic book sales increased significantly due to the introduction of Spider-Man and other characters. Goodman had finally achieved success with Marvel Comics. His vision of a comic book company that catered to teenagers paid off big time. But this success didn't last forever. In the mid-1970s, Marvel Comics encountered financial difficulties. To solve this problem, they licensed their characters to toy companies, film studios, and other businesses. But as Marvel became more diversified, it became less focused on quality control. Characters like Luke Cage and Iron Fist, which were intended to attract a more diverse audience, didn't perform as well as Marvel hoped. And there were many other issues within the company, including legal troubles with some of their creators. But Marvel Comics was able to pull through these tough times thanks to one man, Stanley Martin Lieber, better known as Stan Lee. Unlike his peers who saw comic books as a hobby, Lee was serious about it. He knew that the medium had potential, and he dedicated his life to making comic books as good as they could be. It was Stan Lee who saved Marvel Comics from bankruptcy and turned it into the pop culture phenomenon that it is today. But it wasn't just Stan Lee who was responsible for Marvel's success. He had an incredible group of collaborators who helped him to create some of the most iconic characters and stories in comic book history. Now let's take a look at some of the people who made Marvel what it is today. Jack Kirby was one of the most important contributors to Marvel Comics. He was a writer and artist who helped to create some of the company's most iconic characters, including the Hulk, Thor, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. Kirby had a distinctive art style that was perfectly suited to the Marvel universe. His dynamic artwork helped to bring a sense of action and excitement to the pages of Marvel Comics. Steve Ditko was another important contributor to Marvel Comics. He was the co-creator of Spider-Man, and his distinctive art style helped to establish Spider-Man as one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. Ditko's work on Spider-Man helped to introduce a new level of realism and drama to the series. John Romita Sr. was a prolific artist who worked on a wide range of Marvel titles, including The Amazing Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk, and The Fantastic Four. Romita's artwork helped to bring a new level of sophistication to Marvel Comics, and he was known for his ability to draw realistic faces and figures. Len Wein and Marv Wolfman were two of the most important writers in Marvel Comics history. They helped to shape the direction of the company and introduce new characters like Werewolf by Night, the Inhumans, Ghost Rider, and Man-Thing to the Marvel Universe. Wein and Wolfman's run at Marvel helped to establish the company as a major player in the comic book industry. When Stan Lee took over as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, he knew that he needed to do something drastic to turn the company around. He wanted to create characters that were more relatable to teenagers, but he didn't know how to go about doing this. Then he got an idea. What if he could create characters that were based on real teenagers? This idea led to the creation of some of the most iconic characters in comic book history, including Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. Lee's characters were unlike anything the comic book industry had ever seen before. They were flawed and made mistakes, but they were also funny and relatable. Fans loved it. The comic book industry had never seen anything like it before. One of the reasons why Stan Lee was so successful at creating relatable characters was because he was able to tap into the zeitgeist of the 1960s. The 1960s was a time of social change and upheaval, and Lee's characters reflected that. Spider-Man, for example, was a teenager dealing with the usual problems that teenagers face. This made him more relatable to young readers than traditional superheroes. Another reason why Lee was so successful was because he was willing to push the boundaries of what was acceptable in comic books. He dealt with mature themes like racism and war in his stories, which shocked some readers but also made his characters more realistic. Lee was also a master storyteller. He was able to craft complex plots with multiple twists and turns while still making them accessible to a wide audience. This skill was evident in some of his most famous creations, including the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. The X-Men were a group of mutant superheroes who were feared and hated by humans. This made them outcasts, which gave them a sense of pathos that readers could relate to. The Fantastic Four, on the other hand, were a family of superheroes who were constantly fighting against impossible odds. Readers loved following along as they faced new challenges each issue. Today, Marvel Comics is one of the most successful entertainment companies in the world. The company has produced some of the most iconic characters and stories in history, and its films and television shows are enjoyed by millions of people around the globe. Without Stan Lee and his collaborators, it's unlikely that Marvel would have achieved the success that it has. Lee's innovative characters and storylines helped to transform the comic book industry, and his influence is still felt today. If you've enjoyed learning more about the genius that is Stan Lee, then be sure to check out our other videos on Meet the Visionaries. We have done episodes on other creative minds like Walt Disney and George Lucas, whose work has had an equally profound impact on the world of entertainment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.